Hi kids. Your grandpa, my father, Edward, made a bunch of stories about when he was little. This one is called How Pa Won Ma. That's your grandpa and your grandma Gunther. Or your great-grandpa and your great-grandma, At 18, Geraldine Delsman, that's your great-grandma, was the fetchingest girl in the central coast of Oregon. She and Jack had an understanding. Jack was Geraldine's beau, and Geraldine was Jack's girl. It was a cold November day in 1934 when Jack decided to take a break from his family's farm and go hunting in Canada. He would be gone for 2 weeks. Only 2 weeks. To keep busy during his absence, Geraldine prepared some quart jars of clams to trade with Lester and Naomi, their neighbors on Bay Park Hill. Naomi's brother, John Gunther, was called upon to help Geraldine carry the clams. He carried those clams all right, and got an eyeful to boot. John was done in right off. That means he fell in love with your great-grandma. That night, a handsome young gentleman showed up at Geraldine's door for a movie date. When the message was taken to Geraldine, she declared that she did not know any John Gunther. John had been smitten, and just because he had neglected to tell Geraldine about their date, he was not to be put off. He graciously stepped in at the door and yelled mischievously, "Yes, you do. I'm Naomi's brother." Geraldine appealed to her ma, half-heartedly looking for a way out. But her ma said, "You are 18 and old enough to decide for yourself." Now, as fate would have it, Jack had not left for Canada yet. His sister rowed across the boat, across the Coos River. There'd be no bridge in those days, so they had to take the boat, to inform Geraldine of the Indian summer's final hayride, and Jack would be there. Geraldine so wanted to go, but her mother said she had told John she would go with him, and go with him she would. So Jack went hunting, and John went courting. John suddenly mended his ways, no longer a Methodist, but a Catholic with a mission. When Jack got back, Geraldine simply said, "I got somebody else." She would later tell her children that the old zing she felt with John just wasn't there with Jack. By December, John had a ring on her finger, and poor Jack was looking at a cold winter. Geraldine's father thought it was all too sudden. Maybe Geraldine wasn't old enough to make her own decisions after all. In the end, Geraldine was not to be deterred, but she did consent to wait 6 months before tying the fatal knot. Now it happened that John's father depended upon John for chauffeuring him around, and Geraldine was a hindrance to his future. So it was that Sam Gunther, that's John's father, showed up at Joseph Delsman's house to put an end to this nonsense. He adamantly stated that John was shiftless and a useless wanderer. The two fathers lost the argument with Geraldine, and on June 4th, 1935, Geraldine, aged 19, was no longer a Delsman. They took their honeymoon on borrowed gas to a little northern coastal town in Oregon. Since income was scarce, they drove as far as 1/2 tank of gas would take them, and after a short honeymoon, used the rest of the tank to get back. And they drove Geraldine's pa's brand new 1935 Chevrolet sedan. A little while later, John's father ended up living with them in their little house in North Bend. Stubbornly, he admitted, "Well, if John had to go and get hitched, I'm glad it was you." John was glad too. 1 year turned into 60 years, and Geraldine's graduating class had a reunion. Geraldine went without John, because by then he had rowed over the river. That means he died. What a surprise to meet Jack again. They shared some memories and some laughs. "I've learned one thing," he proclaimed. "Never go to Canada and leave your girl behind. She might not be there when you get back." 2 weeks later, Jack died. But for Geraldine, there was never anybody but the dashing John. The end. Another story I love from your grandfather. Goodbye, kids. I love you.